This is Future Talk.
Future Talk.
Future Talk with Omnia Saleh and Hani Balkis.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Future Talk right here on Pulse 95. I hope you're all having a fantastic afternoon. It is basically the weekend now because we have a very long weekend ahead of us, and Wednesday has become the new Thursday. I hope you're all having a great afternoon and excited to hear the latest on what is happening in the tech world, in the UAE, and around the world. And we're going to be starting today's show by talking about the UAE because a rare blue moon will be in the sky on Saturday this weekend.
Yes, indeed. A lot of exciting things are happening, and it's a good week in general this week because obviously we do have off tomorrow, and Wednesday is the start of our weekend. But, ladies and gentlemen, Apple is asking about the new iPhone 12 and asking its users to be careful with the MagSafe charger. Now, yesterday I did get my hands on the iPhone 12. Yeah.
Did you get it?
Well, you guys should have seen how Omnia was so excited.
Did you get it?
I didn't get it, but my friend had the new iPhone 12. I messed around with it a little bit.
Yeah.
But I do have a couple of comments on it that we will get into in a little bit. But with the new rare blue moon that we might see on Saturday, I'm really excited for just this week in general.
Yes, indeed. Lots and lots is going to be in store, whether it was on the show or even this weekend. But today we're also going to be talking all about AI ethics, because as we get excited about the new developments that are happening in the tech world, we do need to keep in mind that there has to be a lot of ethical certainties when we're deploying any form of tech, whether that was driverless cars or even robotics. How can we ensure that our safety is still in place when we're deploying this form of tech? We're going to be talking all about AI ethics today with the AI ethics researcher at Facebook, Mr. Hubert, Etienne, who's going to be telling us all about the moral dilemmas that can be solved by using AI, as well as Facebook's own methodology when it comes to dealing with AI software. How do they use AI to try and recognize misinformation, which has been a big topic ever since the COVID-19 pandemic has become a part of our lives? But also, why is it important for organizations to take AI ethics into account? So lots and lots is going to be in store on the show today.
Yes, indeed. We're very excited to talk with a researcher at Facebook. A lot of good news coming in today. So keep Pulse 95 locked in and we'll be right back.
Daily digital news. Bits and bytes connect our world.
Bits and bytes do connect our world, ladies and gentlemen. But let's go to outer space and talk about how we in the UAE are going to see a rare blue moon on Saturday, October the 31st, which is Halloween, by the way.
Ooh.
So it's a little bit with the spooky season. Now, brace for a once-in-a-lifetime blue moon Halloween, and experts in the UAE has confirmed that the UAE will see the rare second full moon of this month this Saturday. And ladies and gentlemen, only one full moon does appear in the sky every month. So a blue moon coming out and it being once every month, something crazy, and it does fall on Halloween. So it's a little bit spooky.
Yes, indeed. And very rarely does a second one come up within the same exact period. Now, in English, we tend to say something called, once in a blue moon, which means it's very rare for something to happen. And this is definitely a very rare astronomical phenomena. And this moon is referred to as the blue moon. However, for those of you who are wondering, the moon is not going to be looking blue. So it won't be blue, but it's called the blue moon. And this month, most parts of the world, including the UAE, will also be seeing the second full moon. So you can also see it in different parts around the world. And the first full moon of the month was actually seen on the 2nd of October. So the blue moon tends to appear once or twice every 3 years. So this goes to show how rare this phenomena is. Now, experts have been saying that the moon will not be turning blue, so you're not going to be seeing, a blue moon up in the sky. But the different colors of the moon mainly come from the impurities in the Earth's atmosphere, along with the angle that the moon does show up in at the horizon.
Now, Omnia, we did disappoint a lot of people because we have been getting text messages saying a blue moon, a blue moon. And even Hissa did text us in, and shout out to Hissa, by the way. She did text us in saying, oh my God, I can't wait to see this blue moon. But now
it's not going to be blue. You'll still see a moon.
You'll still see a full moon, but it won't be a blue moon. So when the moon is closest to the Earth, which is around 356,000 kilometers away, a supermoon does occur. The moon does move from apogee to perigee and vice versa every 2 weeks. Now, that is kind of a astronomical terminology, but it does mean that there is moving from one side to another, and it does happen vice versa every 2 weeks. So in these type of time frame, we can see this blue moon phenomena.
Yes, indeed. Now, a lot of you may be wondering, if it's not blue, why are we calling it the blue moon? Well, the reason is because it's a very strange phenomenon to have two moons appearing in the same month. So it goes after the saying, once in a blue moon, but also because every time certain researchers or even people who have seen it in the sky went ahead and tried to take a photo or stamp a photo of the moon amongst the clouds, sometimes the clouds and the moon would give you that typical feel that it looks blue, but in reality, it's not blue.
Omnia, how many times were you in your car or anywhere and you saw the beautiful moon and you took out your phone to take a picture and just looked like a dot?
I was
like a little white dot in the sky, but with your eyes, you can see it's beautiful. But when you take out your phone, it's a little white dot. I hate when that happens.
I absolutely hate it because it's like when you see a beautiful sunset, you want to capture it, and it looks very nice in photos.
Sunsets, they do look nice in photos. When you have a nice full moon, they never turn out nice in photos unless you know what you're doing. I think our photographer or videographer knows how to do that. But ladies and gentlemen, let's go and talk about the iPhone 12 and how Apple is asking its new iPhone 12 users to be careful with the MagSafe charger. Now, before I jump into this, yesterday I did get my hands on the new iPhone 12. Not the iPhone 12 Pro, the new iPhone 12. And I was looking at it, Omnia. It did give me a type of iPhone 5, iPhone 5S vibe. I liked it.
In the structure of it?
In the structure. I liked the feeling of it. It was very sturdy. But what I didn't like, I don't know if the Pro is different, but what I didn't like, it does feel a little bit plastic.
No way.
Yeah, it didn't feel as heavy as this one. Maybe because I have the iPhone 12 Pro Max and it's
11.
heavier. 11 Max and it's heavier. But this one feels more sturdier.
It's probably also because that one is a bit smaller in size.
It's 6.1 inches, so it is pretty standard. And I was talking to him about the MagSafe charger. I was like, so what do you think about the MagSafe charger? He's like, can you believe it or not? But I have a problem charging my phone.
What?
And I said, what do you mean? Well, he said, when I bought the iPhone 12, obviously it didn't come with that outlet. So he's been charging it with his laptop computer.
Oh, God.
Can you imagine that?
Oh, God.
He's been charging it, and when he...
That is really bad, because you're sending more power than the phone can handle.
But when he tried to order one from Apple, Apple was like, delivery is 2 to 4 weeks.
Oh, my God.
So he's in type of a little problem right now. And the problem is, as well, is that he ordered 3 more for his family members.
Oh, God.
So he has 4 iPhones in his house.
No,
and
nothing to charge with.
They all use a laptop to charge their phone.
You see, this is where Apple's common sense just does not make sense at all. You don't put a charger in the box of the iPhone, but how do you expect people to actually use the phone? But now, a new warning is also coming out for the MagSafe magnet-based wireless charging and accessory system, because according to a lot of information that has been released by Apple, the magnets in the system could actually cause a lot of damage to some of your favorite credit cards. So if you have any case that would have your RFID chips or the magnetic strips in the credit cards and security badges attached to your phone, and you go ahead and you put the magnetic charger on the phone, the magnets, it will demagnetize, and they will basically communicate with one another and ruin your credit card. So you got to be very careful when doing that.
Now, I don't know how many people do this, but I know a lot of people who do this, that they'll keep money, a credit card, their ID between their case and their phone.
They have a case attached to it.
It is safer, and some people even do get that case where it is attached to it. Now, it does show that you could have this problem. And the circular imprints that Apple has been talking about, and a lot of tech-savvy people have been talking about these circular imprints. My friend's iPhone is about a week old, and I've already seen these imprints on his case, which obviously it doesn't look that pleasing for the eyes. So we are seeing so far a couple of problems when it does come to the new iPhone 12, especially with that MagSafe charger. But my recommendation so far is don't jump the gun too quick. Don't buy the iPhone 12 yet. As someone who wants to buy the iPhone 12, don't buy it yet. Let's see what Apple does have to say. Because if you remember with the iPhone 6, and I was a victim of the iPhone 6, my iPhone 6 did have problems and it did bend.
Oh, God.
I was one of the first people to get the iPhone 6, and I even got mine imported from the States. And mine did bend. And then I think because I got it from the States, there was no warranty on it. Anyways, I couldn't get a replacement for it, so I did luck out on that. So always remember, ladies and gentlemen, when Apple kind of comes out with these new type of inventions or innovational ideas, wait a little bit, see what the community is saying, see what researchers are saying and see what Apple is saying in general, and then go and make your purchase.
Absolutely. But if you did jump the gun and buy the iPhone 12, there are ways to go around at least minimizing the damage that you're going to have because of the MagSafe charger. One big tip is to make sure that you remove any credit card, any credit cards that you tend to have in the case right before you charge your phone. Just keep them either in your pocket or just in your wallet. It's not safe, honestly, to have it even on the behind of your phone, because if you're going to lose your phone, you're also going to be losing your credit card. So make sure that you try and keep any cards that have any magnetic strips not attached to the phone, at least while it's charging. Let us know what has been your experience with the iPhone 12 if you went ahead and bought it yourself. Text us in at 4215 do Salat or slide into our DMs at Pulse 95 Radio. But coming up, we're talking all about AI ethics with an AI ethics researcher at Facebook. Very interesting conversation coming up, so keep Pulse 95 locked and we'll be right back.
This is Future Talk.
Future Talk.
Future Talk with Omnia Al Saleh and Hani Balkis.
AI has demonstrated its full potential in science and technology. We've used it for gathering and analyzing data, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic in healthcare facilities, but we've also seen its impact when it comes to using it in smart cities as well as autonomous vehicles. But AI can also have some negative sides that if we don't make sure that we control its power and use ethics to make sure that it is being used in the legitimate ways, it could turn against us. Joining us today is AI ethics researcher at Facebook, Mr. Hubert Etienne, who's going to be telling us all about the difference between AI ethics and law. Welcome to the show, Mr. Hubert.
Hi, thank you.
Welcome to the show. It's great to have you on. Now, let's kickstart off this conversation by asking you, what is AI ethics and how is it different from the law?
Sure. So if you actually want to understand what is AI ethics, it is first important to understand what actually ethics is. And to give you a very short but still accurate definition, I'd say ethics is the discipline philosophy that tends to answer the question, what should I do? That's no more complicated than that, pretty simple. How should I do it? What should I do? And to answer these questions, so philosophy actually builds different systems based on moral values and moral obligations that actually they try to apply to practical situations in order to make the right decision. So it's all about making the right decision for given situations. And once we understand that, we also realize that in our daily life, we don't all face the same moral dilemmas. If you're a doctor, you will be facing much more often cases with euthanasia. So patients asking you to help them ending their life. And you have to wonder the question, am I morally legitimate to enable somebody to make such decision or not? So these are the questions that the doctor may face. But if you're, let's say, a financial trader, you may face other questions, such as, should I bet against my own country currency to make profits? So it's very different questions and ethical dilemma you may face in the end. And that's the reason why philosophers actually came up with different subcategories of ethics, what we call applied ethics, which gather all these questions that you may ask for a specific field of activity, like business ethics, bioethics, animal ethics, and this is the case of AI ethics. So just to summarize quickly, the basic idea is that we can say AI ethics is the philosophical discipline which tend to study the ethical implication related to the development of AI technologies. So recognizing the moral obligations in here and playing here as well as the appropriate trade-off between the values intention.
Now, we tend to see a lot of countries working on setting certain laws to make sure that AI is not basically posing any danger on the lives of many. So in your opinion, what are some ethical concerns about artificial intelligence, and what are some guidelines, some basic guidelines that many countries have set to make sure that artificial intelligence is being used for good and nothing else but that?
Sure. So one country which has been, the European Union has been working quite a lot on this. They called a group of high-level experts on AI to produce ethical guidelines for trustworthy AI. And this is an interesting point because this is actually between regulation and ethics. So this group the purpose of this group was to formulate guidelines that would be ethical guidelines. But in the same time, these guidelines are supposed to be the foundation for an upcoming regulation coming in December in Europe. So you are very much at the intersection between these two here.
Okay.
Now, Facebook does have a special ethics team to prevent bias in its AI software. But how are these ethics deployed in the recognition of misinformation on its platforms?
So we do have a team in this direction. It's part of what we call Responsible AI project within Facebook. And they are basically developing new solutions, both theoretical solutions and practical solutions. Because once you have the theory, you also need to implement it as a solution. And they are working as a consulting team for the different services provided by Facebook. Because the biases you may have in a job recommendation algorithm, for instance, may not be the same ones you will have for pattern recognition in auto tagging features, for instance.
Now, can the AI recognize sarcasm, irony, humor? Because those are type of tricky things to understand. Can it recognize those things?
Absolutely, it's extremely tricky, even for humans sometimes.
Yes, of course.
So yeah, it's one of the biggest challenge for algorithms today. Especially when you're addressing hate, online hate, when you're addressing misinformation, and when you have on the one side a caption and on the other side a picture. Sometimes the caption itself is not very hateful. The picture is not either, but the combination of the two is actually hateful or misleading. That's one of the main challenges we have today. But we made some significant improvement in the last version of our misinformation classifier on Facebook on this. So we're doing kind of multimodal understanding, which basically try to put all the signals you receive in the same sphere and then analyze it from here.
Now, Hubert, I have a question. Since we do know that Facebook does own Instagram, is this AI kind of implemented on Instagram as well?
So yes, absolutely. The systems we have on Facebook are also on Instagram. So the policies differ, but for misinformation, for instance, we have joint efforts between the two companies in that direction.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Coming up on Future Talk, we're going to be diving a little deeper into how can we manage online hate by using artificial intelligence on Facebook, Instagram, and other social media platforms, but also how has artificial intelligence helped medical care professionals to basically solve a lot of the moral dilemmas that they have been faced with during the COVID-19 pandemic? If you have any questions for Hubert, make sure you send them in at 4215 Do Itisalat or slide into our DMs at Pulse 95 Radio. Keep Pulse 95 locked. We'll be right back.
This is Future Talk.
Future Talk. Future Talk with Omnia Al Saleh and Hani Balkis.
During the COVID-19 pandemic, many of us found ourselves glued to our computer screens, either the computer screen or our phones, and all we did was scroll aimlessly on social media platforms. But with that, a lot of people were using their boredom to basically try and spread either misinformation or hatred online, whether it was in the comments section or even if it was on their news feed. But what have different social media platforms, mainly Instagram and Facebook, done to combat that? Joining us today is AI ethics researcher at Facebook, Mr. Hubert Etienne, who's going to be telling us all about the different methods that artificial intelligence has been providing to help make social media platforms a much more positive space for everyone. Welcome to the show, Mr. Hubert.
Thank you.
Yes. Now, I want to ask how we can use AI to stop the spread of misinformation.
Sure. So I'll explain you how it works at Facebook, because AI is at the very heart of our strategy, both at Facebook and Instagram, to address misinformation. But before, perhaps just one point on the difference that we found in misinformation with the COVID-19 thing, is that misinformation used to be a big issue for platforms like since a long time. But the very novelty here with the COVID is that we have not only an increase in the volume of misinformation, but also new kind of misinformation with potential physical harm. So when you see a claim saying drink bleach and it's going to cure your COVID. So it's much more dangerous. We also had a lot of scams.
There are many remedies, magical remedies to COVID-19 all of a sudden, all over Facebook.
Absolutely, and we need to protect the community against that, definitely. So quickly, the whole process of addressing misinformation at Facebook and Instagram implies three main steps. The first one is detection. So here we use AI algorithms to leverage a great number of signals, including user reports, to identify the pieces of content most likely to contain false news. That's the first step. Second one is review process. So then independent third-party fact checkers, who are journalists, review individually these contents. And when they say that a content contains a false claim, they have to provide an evidence debunking the news. That's the review process.
So
for the human.
the review is
Yes.
done by humans. So the collection is by
Absolutely.
AI and the review is with humans.
And then you have a third step, which is scaling up, which is also performed by AI. Basically, when an action is taken on a content, like for instance, one content is removed, we use an algorithm which is called SimSearchNet, which is in-house algorithm at Facebook, which mission is to identify all the near copies of this content and take the same action on them, so that fact checkers do not have to debunk the same time, several times the same misinformation.
Oh, okay. So it's basically a collaboration between artificial intelligence and human beings to be able to provide a very fair, at least, process when it comes to debunking such myths about COVID-19.
Absolutely.
Now, it does seem that when we do talk about AI in general, we talk about the future of the job market and how AI could affect jobs. But it does seem and it does show that AI and humans are working together. And also, I want to talk about how it does give fairness to the user, that AI does detect these type of misinformation. It's not sure whether or not it is misinformation,
True.
but it does go to the human for the review. So that way I can see that it's a fair game.
I hope so. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a fair game.
But also when it comes to using artificial intelligence, we tend to see it also deployed in the way that different social media platforms are trying to fight online hate. So there were many features, especially during the past few months during lockdown, that were released by Instagram to help stop cyberbullying and online hate that tends to be found in the comment section or even in some news feeds. So can you tell us a little bit about how does artificial intelligence pick up on online hate that is done, especially if the human content creators, let's say, are using not very direct language, so they're using sarcasm or irony to try and spread online hate. How can artificial intelligence pick up on these different trends?
Sure. So just the same way we use AI to detect false information, we also use this same kind of classifiers to detect hate speech and bullying. And so basically at the beginning, you have very little historical data, so it's very bad. But the more data you have, the more you can train them and the better they become. So that's why the algorithms we have today are much better than what they used to be 2 or 3 years ago. And this is why they tend to get a grasp of what irony could be or sarcasm. And today we actually have quite good results in detecting hate speech because for Facebook at least, 90% of hate speech removed by the platform is actually detected by algorithms before users even report it.
Now, it's interesting that you mentioned that you use data to train this artificial intelligence because a lot of users actually are very concerned about the data collection. So if this information is being used to train artificial intelligence, does that mean that users' information is not private anymore?
Not at all. Not at all. No, obviously, Facebook complies with all regulations, but you don't need to keep the data to train the algorithm. Once the algorithm is trained, you don't need to keep the data anymore. So you can totally have a great algorithm without keeping all this data afterward.
Okay, interesting to know. So people's privacies are not being compromised.
It's very important.
Absolutely.
Privacy is very important. And I like the approach Facebook does have on this topic. And with the pandemic, as you've mentioned, Hubert, it is very important misinformation because this isn't any misinformation that won't harm human beings. It will harm a lot of people because, as you did mention, the bleach, the home remedies, the cream,
Drink hot water.
the essence, there's a lot of things that just don't make sense. But unfortunately, because of the pandemic, a lot of people do go to desperate things. Desperate times call for desperate measures, and people do go for the extreme. So having this AI software, it's just amazing how I can see Facebook tackling this problem.
I definitely agree with Hani on that. And but whenever we're also talking about artificial intelligence, and since you've mentioned the coronavirus, one application of AI ethics has been in the way doctors and healthcare professionals have been using AI to help basically manage some of the dilemmas that they were facing, especially in terms of shortages. So can you tell us a little bit about how has artificial intelligence helped those healthcare professionals in, let's say, the way they allocate beds for patients?
Sure. So there were actually a couple of collaborations between Facebook AI and different labs in NYU and Cornell, especially in the US, to develop systems that could permit to have better information for healthcare institutions. So as you said, the main question is shortage. So basically you have medical staff with limited resources and limited information to take care of a great number of people in need. And they often face, so when they don't have enough masks or test kits or artificial ventilators or resuscitation beds or even human resources, like the number of nurses and doctors, they often faces what we call a moral dilemma, within which they have to allocate beds to a surplus number of people. To give you an example of that, you can picture yourself as a nurse in a hospital and asking you that question: would you refuse an available bed, resuscitation bed, to a patient with 50% chances of surviving when paramedics announce you that they're coming with three new patients, all having 80% chances of surviving?
Oh, God.
And let me give you a second one, because I like this. Would you rather allocate a bed to somebody with 95% chances of survival, but who will occupy it for 6 weeks versus an average of 3 weeks for others?
Oh, God. You see, this is exactly why I am not in the healthcare industry.
So let's be clear. Basically, algorithms alone cannot and should not, I insist on that, be those answering these questions, because that calls for some human responsible choice and not an algorithmic one. However, what can AI do is to help you model the spread of the outbreak, so you can actually be able to predict when and where the next peak of the pandemic will hit. And so in advance, you can try to best manage the resources you have between hospitals, just moving resources from an hospital to another one in order to avoid these kind of situations.
So
another thing you can do, is just to analyze clinical data, so patients' data, all anonymized, of course, and predict at the hospital level just the total number of patients whose condition is likely to improve or worsen, so you can best manage the number of beds that might be free in the next few hours or days, and know if you need more or less. So the whole question is not to make decisions at the patient level, but to best manage the limited resources you have, not to take this decision in the first place.
Now, the AI that is being used with Facebook to counter misinformation, does it use machine learning as well?
Yes, absolutely.
Amazing.
When we talk about AI, we talk about machine learning usually.
Yeah, okay.
Such as
Amazing.
Okay, so basically we're trying to use artificial intelligence in hospitals to prevent a disaster before it even happens by trying to track and predict when will the next peak of COVID-19 hit. Lots and lots is still in store right here on Future Talk, because coming up we're talking all about robot rights. Just like we want AI to take care of our rights, we have to treat them in a very equal manner as well. If you have any questions for Mr. Hubert, make sure you send them in at Pulse 95 Radio on Instagram, and our text lines are open for 215 do or Etisalat. Keep Pulse 95 locked. We'll be right back.
This is Future Talk.
Future Talk. Future Talk with Omnia Al Saleh and Hani Balkis.
You know, when we expect people to treat us well, we have to be ready to treat people well as well. Wow, so many wells in one sentence. But this also is implemented on artificial intelligence and robotics. Whenever we want to make sure that they are treating us with fairness, they are treating us without necessarily causing any harm, we need to ensure that we are practicing the same AI etiquette with them as well. Joining us today is AI ethics researcher at Facebook, Hubert Etienne, who's been enlightening us about the different ways artificial intelligence has been helping out in managing online hate and misinformation on both Facebook and Instagram. Welcome to the show once again, Hubert.
Yeah, now we're going to be talking about one of the primary concerns that people do have with AI, and it is future loss of jobs. Now, should we strive to fully develop and integrate AI into society, even if it does mean many people will lose their jobs? So, that's... You there?
Yes, I'm here. So yeah, I think, to be honest, beside a few exceptions like supermarket cashiers or taxi drivers, nobody can really know which kind of jobs will be replaced and which ones will be created. So I feel we'll have to wait. However, I'm not that concerned about the balance between the jobs we lose and the jobs that will be created. I'm more concerned about the types of new jobs that will appear and the trade-off between those that will disappear and those that will be created.
Okay, so when we're talking about types of jobs that will be created, in your opinion, what are some of the major ones that we should expect to join the job market?
So one obvious one I can tell you is AI ethicists.
Okay.
And I encourage everyone to join this path. No, I think there'll also be a lot of opportunities around the new understanding of human behavior because algorithms are good. We have a lot of people working on algorithms and making them more efficient today, but it's all about also understanding the data. So I think social scientists have a lot to play here.
Absolutely. Now, whenever we're talking about having AI treat us well, a lot of people tend to think that since artificial intelligence and robotics don't have emotions, that we can treat them in any way, shape, or form. But in your opinion, how should we be treating artificial intelligence, and do robots or AI have any rights?
Oh, that's a big question. I'm happy you asked this one because one of the most interesting surely in AI ethics. Honestly, I'm sure if you ask the auditors, most of them would find very cruel to torture a dog for no reason, and they would see no issue with the fact of hitting a computer or vacuum robots, right?
Yeah.
And because at the end of the day, I mean, it's not alive, so what would you care? And in the same time, perhaps we're not focusing on the right thing when we focus on the emotion or the suffering that the robot can actually experience, but more about how we feel about that ourselves. And we've seen interesting cases where actually US soldiers were crying when the deminer robots exploded on the bomb. So they were extremely emotionally engaged with these robots, although they knew there were no consciousness, no capacity to suffer, not even alive. So yeah, I feel like we do have an authentic empathy towards these robots, and that's something we should definitely dig around.
It puts a lot of things into perception now. Soon enough, I do believe in the next 5 years, just an uneducated guess, but in the next 5 years, AI and robots in general will be a big part of our lives. And we can already see it with a lot of big tech companies putting AI and robots in our households, starting with that. So what do you think in the next 5 years? Where does AI and robotics stand?
5 years, I have no idea what will happen in 5 years. Perhaps we're going to be on the moon.
That's a good enough question. Yeah.
But sure, I think in 2 years, many things will change. I hope. I hope for AI ethics also, not only for AI. But yes, I also think that we'll have a lot of IoT pretty much everywhere around us. Most of the data will be monitored, and so hopefully in the desirable way and responsible way.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Hubert Etienne, for joining us today, AI ethics researcher at Facebook. It's been such an interesting conversation with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, ladies and gentlemen,
yes,
it is Wednesday.
It is Wednesday.
So, but this week, Wednesday means Thursday because tomorrow is the Prophet Muhammad's birthday. So, you know what time it is.
It is time for the halftime show with Omar Al-Douri. It's going to be kicking off in just a few moments, but we do want to remind you that this weekend is going to be a long weekend, but it's also a weekend where you can grab some cash because Big Hass is coming in with the Saturday Vibes on Saturday from 6 to 7 p.m. And what can they win, Hani?
They can win a lot of things, ladies and gentlemen. Well, you can win cash prizes, prizes in general, anything you could think of would be here on the show, the Saturday Vibe with Big Haas. But it is sponsored by Ben Sina Pharmacy, 06 Mall, Spicy and Ginger Restaurant, and the Sheraton Sharjah Beach Resort and Spa.
So there are so many prizes to grab.
Yes, so do expect from these 4 places a prize from them. Now, the past couple of weeks, we've been seeing a lot of nice talents on the Saturday Vibe, and I personally have been tuning in. It is from 6 to 7 p.m. every Saturday.
Yes, indeed. So if you have any talent that you would like the world to hear, or if you want to demonstrate it, make sure you go ahead and tune in on Saturday, Pulse 95 from 6 to 7 p.m.
If you liked this episode of Future Talk, drop a like and subscribe.
Pulse 95.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram for all our daily updates and top stories.